Hey everyone, welcome back. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're going to unpack a truly fascinating psychological and financial phenomenon. Today's explainer is all about diving into the real math behind those irresistible once-in-a-lifetime events. You know exactly the ones I'm talking about, right? Those massive mega events that make you toss your entire budget out the window purely on excitement. We are going to break down the actual mechanics of how we justify these massive purchases. And we're going to look at two completely different paths you can take when the circus finally rolls into town. Okay, let's dive right into this. The ultimate trap almost always begins with what I like to call napkin math. You look up the base ticket price. Let's say it's around $60 for a group stage match. And you think, hey, that's totally doable. That's basically just the cost of a nice dinner out. But the staggering real-world reality to attend a mega event properly? Yeah, that often skyrockets closer to $9,000. It is a massive leap, and today we're going to examine exactly how that happens. To really wrap our heads around this, let's introduce our two protagonists for today's explainer, Danny and Wes. Now, they are exactly the same age, they live in the same city, they make the exact same salary of $55,000 a year, and critically, they both have exactly $9,000 in savings. So, the summer the World Cup comes to town, Danny buys a ticket. The absolute second he drops that confirmation screenshot in his group chat, his phone lights up like a Christmas tree. He is the instant hero. He's telling his barber, he's telling random strangers on the train. Wes, on the other hand, well, Wes opens a broker job, puts his $9,000 into a broad market index fund, and closes it. Total silence, zero texts. The extreme dopamine gap between these two guys on day one is massive. Danny's winning by a mile emotionally. But as we all know, spreadsheets and feelings are very different animals. Number one, the dynamic pricing trap. So how exactly does Danny's seemingly affordable plan spiral out of control so fast? Well, here is the engine running the whole show, dynamic pricing. You have to understand, this isn't a glitch. It is the system. It's literally a machine built to find the exact moment your judgment goes quiet and charge you a premium for it. These organizations know for a fact that scarcity plus obsession is the most profitable equation in the world. When you hear a ticking countdown clock and the phrase once in a lifetime, a little switch flips in your head that just suspends your normal rules about money. You think you're making a rational decision, but you're really just responding to a highly engineered prompt. Let's actually walk through the snowball effect step by step. First, that $60 ticket, yeah, the matches Danny actually wants to see surge into the hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Second, the tournament is spread out across multiple cities, so Danny needs connecting flights at peak summer prices, which easily costs over $1,000 before he even sees a single soccer ball. Third, hotels. They don't just raise their rates, they levitate them. Normal, everyday hotels quietly triple their nightly rates for tournament dates, adding maybe $2,000 to $3,000 more. And finally, step four, the swarm of small stuff. Ride shares, food, stadium beer that costs an absolute fortune, and of course, you gotta get the $100 polyester jersey. None of it is crazy on its own, but it's like 40 of these small decisions in a row. Add it all up, and the trip lands right around $9,000. And look, that isn't just some random figure. That is Danny's entire life savings, completely consumed by a single trip. The trip didn't just fit his budget, it completely ate his budget and licked the plate clean. Number two, the cost of financing fun. Welcome to the invisible trap of debt. See, most people aren't paying for this purely out of a comfortable cash surplus. They're putting a couple of $1,000s on a credit card at north of 22% interest, or they get caught up in those incredibly tempting buy now, pay later buttons that magically slice a $2,000 decision into 4 easy payments. And hey, even if you stay home like Wes, there is still the trap of ambient spending, betting apps promising a little side income, or just running up casual tabs at the local sports bar. You can easily spend $900 without once feeling it leave your hand. The harsh reality of financing a party is that the party ends, but the payments absolutely do not. Just think about it like this. The experience was a moment. The bill is a subscription. Danny flies home in July, glowing with all these amazing memories. But by the cold, hard reality of October, he checks his statement and realizes he is literally still paying rent on a weekend that already happened months ago. Number three, the power of boring math. Now let's check in on Wes. For Wes, year one is deeply, profoundly boring. He sits on his couch in his socks, watching the matches perfectly framed in crisp YouTube-size 16:9 on his TV screen. His $9,000 index fund drifts up a little, drifts down a little, and honestly, it is incredibly difficult psychologically. Wes sees Danny's photos in the group chat, the roaring crowd, the smoke, the massive grin, and he feels that hot little jab of doubt. He feels the strong pull to just blow up his entire boring financial plan for something that feels alive. But discipline isn't about not feeling that pull. It's about feeling it and doing the absolute hardest thing in personal finance anyway, nothing. But watch what happens over time. Let's fast forward to year 10. Compounding is super boring for a few years, and then it suddenly stops being boring. Danny has 10-year-old photos in a jersey that's literally going see-through at the shoulders. Meanwhile, Wes is untouched $9,000, growing at the stock market's long-run average of around 10% a year, has more than doubled into the mid-20,000s, and Wes didn't add a single dime. This right here is the quiet violence of compounding. The snowball has finally found the hill, and Wes's money is now doing all the heavy lifting for him. Now let's stretch this out to 20 years, which represents 5 World Cup cycles. Because remember, nobody just does this once. Every 4 years, the trip calls to Danny again. If Danny finances 5 of these trips, and Wes invests that same $9,000 every 4 years instead, the gap becomes staggering. Wes isn't just sitting on a nice return. He is sitting on north of $150,000. That's not just a digital number on a screen. That is serious life leverage. We're talking a fully paid off car, a huge chunk of a kid's college tuition, or a massive dent in a mortgage. Wes's boring, everyday consistency turned into incredible financial security. Number 4. The memory dividend. Now, if we just stopped the math right there, you'd think Wes is an absolute genius and Danny is a total fool, right? Actually, scratch that, because spreadsheets are entirely blind to emotional returns. Psychological research consistently confirms a very real phenomenon. The money you spend doing something makes you happier and for much longer than the money you spend owning something. Danny isn't an idiot. He bought an experience, and experiences appreciate in a way that index funds simply cannot measure. Because the reality is, possessions fade, but experiences, they do the exact opposite. Think about it for a second. The expensive gadgets you buy eventually just fade into the background noise of your life, but experiences actually grow in your memory. Over time, your brain acts as this amazing editor. It edits out the nasty sunburns, the overpriced stadium beer, and the annoyingly long flight delays. And what are you left with? Just the pure, unadulterated joy of the 89th minute winning goal and hugging total strangers like they are your absolute best friends. And Danny gets these highly specific, totally unquantifiable dividends that are incredibly unique to him. First off, the anticipation alone pays real, measurable joy for months before the trip even starts. Second, context matters so much. The 2026 tournament is the first North American World Cup since 1994. Some things are just genuinely rare. If Danny brings his 7-year-old son Leo to stand in that stadium for the only home World Cup of his entire childhood, they forge a lifelong bond. When Leo grows up and asks, "Dad, were you there?" Danny gets to look at him and say yes. There is absolutely no index fund on Earth that pays that specific dividend. And just to take a super quick macro view here before we wrap up, it's not just fans who fall for this. This spending trap is so psychologically potent that it literally fools entire governments. When host cities spend public money on these mega events, studies show the average financial return is negative 38%. That is basically an economist's very polite way of saying the city lit a massive pile of taxpayer money on fire and handed them a month-long party as the receipt. The hype machine works on everyone for sure, from the fan with the shiny new credit card all the way up to the mayor with the municipal bond. Number 5, beating the countdown clock. Because here's the secret. You don't actually have to choose between strictly being Danny or strictly being Wes. There is a third guy. This fan saves cash over 2 years instead of spontaneously financing the trip on a random Tuesday. He actually does the math and realizes he can go to just one single group stage match instead of wildly chasing his team across multiple time zones. He intentionally skips that ultra-expensive marquee final. He brings his kid, he gets the unforgettable memory, but because he flat out refused to be rushed by the countdown clock, he comes home with absolutely no invoice chasing him into the next year. He gets almost everything Danny got, and he keeps almost everything Wes kept. Which brings us to our final thought today. The next time the hype machine spins up and some flashing countdown clock tries to rush you into a once-in-a-lifetime purchase, remember to just pause. Check the price. Danny bought a genuinely amazing weekend that his son will literally remember forever. Wes bought a decade of financial freedom that lets him say yes to the things his family truly needs later on in life. Neither man is a fool, as long as the choice they made was intentional. The only real fool is the person who let the countdown clock make the decision for them. So when the clock starts ticking for you, which path will you choose? The weekend or the decade.